Weekends are a good time to escape to the woods. Unless the weekend begins with Friday the 13th. Because 13 is an unlucky number. But out here, so are 1 through 12. Because these are Jason's woods. And nobody leaves them alive. Friday the 13th, Part 3, in 3D. Jason, you can't fight him. You can't stop him. And now, you can't even keep him on the screen. Friday the 13th, Part 3, in 3D. Now, when it comes to killing in Jason's woods, Jason will come to you. Friday the 13th, Part 3, in 3D. A new dimension in terror. It will scare you. Count on it.
Welcome to They Call Us a Movie, testing the strength of friendships one terrible movie at a time. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and other podcast services by searching They Call Us a Movie, and find us on Twitter and Instagram at TicTamPod. That's TCTAM Pod. Welcome back to They Call Us a Movie. This is Anthony Del Vecchio. With me, as always, is Mark Meyer. Say hello, Mark.
Hey, how you doing? It's October. It's surprisingly, to people out there, my favorite time of the year on this podcast. Not because I'm a huge fan of horror like the two of you, but this is when we actually watch movies that are relatively good. Not saying this one was so much, but we tend to not watch stuff that makes me want to just never watch a movie again.
Sure.
During October. So it's always fun, and I always love to hear your thoughts and Dan's thoughts on these movies here. But yeah, I love October, and I hope our fans do too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the elephant in the room, Dan's not here, couldn't make it tonight. And besides that, we were also off for 2 weeks, which was my fault. I had some personal issues that I had to attend to. We did record the last episode of September, which was our September movie of the month, but during the editing phase, those family issues came up. So that will be our first episode in November. So it'll be a little kind of a time capsule because we recorded it about 2 weeks ago already. So it'll be a little, not necessarily as timely as we usually are, but that'll come in November.
I just wonder if my open will have me saying something, predicted something, and it's like either way wrong or somehow exactly right, and I should have gone to Las Vegas at that point.
Well, we'll see the first week in November. How about that?
Yeah, because I completely forget what I say at the beginning of these episodes as soon as it happens.
Yeah. That episode is Zapped, which was the one that won the September Movie of the Month poll. So check that out in November. But we did miss last week, as Mark mentioned, would have been our first episode in 31 Days of Horror. I guess we could still call it that. But we are moving right along with this week's episode, and this week is a special episode. It's going to be a short episode because I don't have a whole lot of notes on this one.
Yeah.
Dan's not here.
And it's not a whole lot to say from what I gathered too, but there are some things to talk about, and I am excited to pick your brain with it.
And we're probably not going to have a third segment because Dan's not here. Would have been fun without him. It wouldn't be as fun without him, so we're just going to move on. But this is a special episode because we are releasing this on Friday the 13th. So as we started doing on our episodes where we have a Friday the 13th, we cover a Friday the 13th movie. And the one that we have up next is Friday the 13th Part 3.
Yeah.
I have seen this once before. At the beginning of the pandemic, I started to watch a good amount of movies, and mostly horror movies. So I watched this, and it's boring as hell.
Yeah.
It is. The one noteworthy thing is that Jason gets his hockey mask in this, but otherwise the characters are all kind of boring. I don't know who is who, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know the names of them. I don't remember any particularly good kills. There are those moments where they try and do the 3D, I guess, is a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the 3D stuff made me laugh every time it happened because since we're watching it in 2D, it was way too obvious when they were doing it. Just because it's old school 3D and not like the newfangled stuff. So like my favorite one was the baseball bat with the little kids. The kid literally had to stand there for like 5 seconds, so that the camera could capture it for 3D before he moved. And it just made so many scenes start so awkwardly. Like that guy putting up the clothesline had the wooden pole in the camera for a little bit. But I think I haven't seen these movies as much as you have. I've never seen 3. It's my first time seeing this movie. But after a conversation that we had yesterday before this, I still don't know why these movies start the movie showing you a better movie at the beginning. For those you don't know, part 2 starts with the end of part 1, and part 3 starts with the end of part 2. And both movies are better. The predecessor is better than the movie you're actually watching.
Interesting. You think, because I'm of the opinion that 2 is better than 1.
I'm going to say it's probably because I've seen 1 more.
Okay.
Because the movies we had in our house were like the original Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, and like I guess maybe my mom really liked them. I don't know, because those were really the only horror movies we had, and the original Friday the 13th.
Okay.
So I just watched it a lot more. So I think that might have been like the second or third time I watched 2 when we watched it last year. But
actually earlier this year, I think.
Oh, earlier this year. Yeah. So yeah, but this movie, I mean, there's no doubt that 2 is better than this movie.
Yeah. I think it's an artifact from the days before home video.
Okay. So
they're like, well, you haven't seen this. You probably haven't had a chance to see this movie in 2 years.
Yeah.
Remember, this is what happened.
Because I've only seen Halloween 1, and obviously, we'll get into that because I have something to think about third movies in a series. But Halloween 2 to Halloween 1, do they do the same thing? It's sort of.
I haven't seen Halloween 2 in a long time. I don't remember.
I know they did the supercut thing where they introduced that they're brother and sister, which isn't actually in the first movie.
Right.
I know they had that supercut, but yeah, maybe it was just a thing. You're probably absolutely right, trying to remind people of the characters. But this broke a string of third movies in a series for horror movies because Halloween 3 Season of the Witch is a terrific sequel and great movie. Probably one of the patron saints of the podcast.
Yeah, you don't preach into the choir on that one.
Yeah. And then I've only heard great things about Exorcist 3.
Yes.
Being there. And then obviously Jaws 3D. No, just kidding.
Nightmare on Elm Street, Dream Warriors
is good. Yeah, but this one, it felt like it fell into the trap. Besides all the stupid 3D stuff, it fell into a trap of trying to make it too much like the ones before it. I think they even had a character that was in the second one or first. I was kind of confused if that was a recurring character from the last movie or not.
No, she wasn't.
Okay. But they had that character that had some interaction with Jason that I guess, at some point. And then it shot on basically what looked like the same location. And yeah, it was just really like nothing really stood out, as you said, to separate this outside of the I had a really good laugh at the one kill. You said not any memorable kills, but for me, the one when he kills the girl with the harpoon is probably my favorite. Because she's like, no, don't do that. What are you doing? Stop. And you see they go to Jason and he's like staggering, trying to aim the harpoon.
Lining it up.
And I was just laughing the whole time. And then they shot and I was expecting it to be like a forehead kill. And it went right through the eyes. I just laughed out loud. So I laughed so loud I scared my cat. Because I was not expecting it to go through the eye. Yeah. But my one thought to move on to maybe a discussion point, I've never been an actor and had to audition for parts, but how does it help your confidence if you get cast in the role as the nerdy kid in this movie? Like, does it say, we just need someone that's like really ugly? Yeah. Like, and completely unattractive. Hey, you're perfect.
He's 80s Seth Rogen.
Yeah.
Shelley. Yeah. It's got it. I mean, I guess if you have a certain look, you have to have some sort of self-awareness, right? Yeah. Like, I know the types of roles that I'm going to be cast for. I'm not going to be cast as the leading man, I guess.
I mean, only one of us on this podcast could be cast as Rhett Butler. So
sure. You flatter me.
But yeah, that was the whole thing I was thinking. Like when they were breaking down that character, I'm like, God, I don't know if I'd have the confidence myself to know why they picked me for this movie. But that just gets into the crux. He's the only him and the weed smokers, or are the only ones that I remembered. I don't remember their names. I just remember them. Because I got the three other girls confused.
They look very similar.
I had no idea who's who. One of them was pregnant, I think.
Yeah.
And I don't know which one that was. And then, the only distinctive ones were the bikers they ran into. They were the only ones that had any kind of characterization at all in the movie. That's probably, there are two really dumb 3D moments in this movie. There is the yo-yo. Which is so blatantly obvious and so terrible. And then him tossing the wallet to her. Because in 2D, it just makes no sense why he would do that.
Yeah.
And it just sets up a very laughable scene. And then apparently he was going to commit vehicular homicide. It's the implication there. That guy didn't jump out of the way.
Right.
But yeah, the entire movie just, like, even this was this still an R movie? I didn't get to look that up.
You mean R-rated?
Yeah.
I think there's nudity in it.
I think there's like a flash. Yeah, there's like a brief flash of boob. I forgot. Because it felt like until that flash in the shower that they were purposely hiding it, and I thought they were going for like a PG-13 or whatever.
From what I remember when I first saw this, I had kind of the same note of like it just kind of feeling muted in a way. As at the very least of what we know this series would eventually become,
and
cheap exploitation essentially.
And it destroys the trope, I'm assuming, of the virgin surviving, because I don't know if that girl was a virgin. The final girl. Sure. In this, because like I said, one of them's pregnant, one of them has sex. I know she's dead, but and then the other girl's dead. That was they purposely brought along for the ugly kid. And I guess that girl never. Then she has to be the pregnant one. Okay, I don't. Again, this remember. Movie. Yeah, it's so much.
The girl that was having sex could have been the pregnant chick.
That's true.
That's how that's how you get in that situation.
Yeah. And they say the hormones kick in during that. But there wasn't even any like funny Jason moments in this. I think the only real thing that he did that made me laugh was when he pulls up his mask to show him that he's the guy from before, and then slowly puts the mask back on.
Yeah, that's a weird moment.
Like, that's the only moment where I'm like, that's fucking weird for this guy to do. But this seems like this is like when they probably realized that this type of movie doesn't work anymore. I don't know how many more I'm saying this without doing any research, so I apologize out there. I don't know how many more kids at camp movies occur from here on out in terms of the horror, because that feels like a late 70s, early 80s thing. Okay. But there could have been stuff in the mid 80s that I'm forgetting or not realizing things are more recent than I think. But this feels like very much the end of that genre, that trope, because there's not much else you can do in the location they put you in. I did the only part of the fight with Jason at the end is when the girl jumps off, I think, the second story to, I guess, put the rope around his neck or something at one point in the barn. But I was just like, oh, that's a pretty cool thing. Like, there was nothing that kept my attention. And that was even if I wasn't slightly distracted by outside things going on. Right. But yeah, I always judge, as I've said on this podcast many times, the level of quality in terms of boredom by how many times I check my phone. And even though I did have my phone ready for other reasons, I was more paying attention to that than the movie at certain points. Like, it was just, I can kind of hear what's going on and kind of infer, and yeah, it wasn't good, but, I guess this is the point where you just make the movie stupid from here on out, and that's your entertainment, because trying to make them a serious horror movie, I guess, kind of has run its course. I don't know if anything else.
Yeah, this one, it's funny because I think 4 is a much better movie than this. That's the one that has Crispin Glover. It's got Corey Feldman. But these movies continue to make money. That's really all it came down to. The budget for this one was $2.3 million, and it made almost $37 million. So, and they were gonna get blood from this stone as long as they could. But this definitely feels like a just kind of their movie. It's like a step to get to the next step, really. Like, anytime those mid 2010 series decided to break out their movies into, their last movies into 2 movies, that first movie always felt like it was useless. That's what this kind of movie kind of feels in hindsight compared to like 4, and then like the interesting stuff in 5 and the goofiness of 6. Because like 5, it's not Jason. Spoiler alert: Jason doesn't come back in that one. In 6, he does come back, and it's a little more. It's almost a parody of the series in itself.
Is 6 Manhattan?
No.
Or is that 8?
I think that's 8.
Okay.
I think 8 is Manhattan.
For some reason, I knew it was an even number in my head.
Yeah. Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan.
Yeah. So, no, I feel the exact same way about it. It just felt like it was a waste of everyone's time, including, it felt very much, now thinking about it, I didn't even think about this before, felt very much like a contract movie.
Sure.
Because it's the same director, right? You had said?
Yep.
It's 2. It felt very much like they signed people to or him and maybe the writer, I don't know if it's the same writer, to 2 movie deal. And this was the second one, and they just lost interest in it, at some point, and didn't want to come up with anything new. They were just playing out their contract sort of way. That's you saying that, if mentioning like the part 1s of 2s, it very much felt like they just wanted to move on to something else.
Yeah. This it feels like a very safe version of these movies, I guess is a good way to put it. I do like Jason being just an absolute oaf in this movie, because like as we get further and further into this series, he just becomes very omnipresent, and he just kind of is there and then disappears in a blink of an eye. Here, you're watching him just knocking shit over accidentally, like stumbling down the stairs and just being a goon. I like the fact. I kind of like that, where he's like, you're watching him walk down the stairs, when in the other movies he would just disappear and reappear.
Yeah, it very much allowed the 3, well, I guess 4 main killers at the time all have like a distinctive personalities to them, and because it feels like as they go along, they all become way too supernatural, more than just Freddy's whole thing is supernatural, but he's just a maniac. And Michael is just very stoic and sneaky. Jason's the oaf, and I guess Leatherface, you can say, is just very goal oriented. He gets one thing in his mind, and he's going to go do that. A sort of way, so you can kind of distinct. But as they get it, like when they start doing, like, you don't see much of that difference and stuff. From what I remember of Freddy versus Jason, they just seem like two supernatural gods fighting each other.
Yeah. He gets more. He died in the canon of this whole series is that at this point he's not dead, literally.
Yeah.
But he does die. 5 happens, and then he's brought back to life in 6. So technically, it's not just an accidental, like, oh, we have to figure out why he comes back. He literally does come back from the dead in the 6th one, which is the New Beginning. So I guess it's built into the canon. But yeah, I do enjoy just him just stumbling around, getting tricked.
Does he... You're probably not going to remember because it was the very end of the movie. But does he like stumble out the door when she has like the dream of him still being alive? Like he breaks through that door, and I think he like stumbles down the steps.
Yeah, he definitely has a hard time with that window.
Yeah. Yeah, now that you mention it, I'm just like, yeah, it is funny when he shows up because the only times he actually gets people, besides sheer force of will at times, is when they like walk into him.
Yeah. Like even the harpoon shot, it's like you were watching him, steady his aim. He's holding it up against like a lamppost.
Yeah.
Just real unrefined.
Oh, that harpoon kill, my favorite moment in the movie. But yeah, I think that's basically my whole thought process with this movie is that, I as much as I am more of a fan of this era and practical effects and all that stuff of horror movie than your more recent things that have been helped with technology. This one just gave me nothing to latch on to. And maybe that's why the one good kill is the thing stuck in my brain. I don't remember how any of the other people die.
Outside of it too.
Yeah, outside of the real dumb thing where the one biker gets his hand cut off so his hand can fly into the camera for the 3D.
Right.
That's the only thing I remember about that, because all it was his hand gets cut and then it's just a blurry hand in the 2D because it's supposed to be flying out at you. And but it was, man, I wish this movie was better. But
right.
Not to be.
We have the next one to look forward to in, let's see when.
When is the next Friday the 13th?
That is September, a year from now, basically.
Nice.
September 2024 is our next Friday the 13th, so we'll get to watch Friday the 13th Part 4.
Nice.
Yeah. So, Friday the 13th Part 3 from 1982 is directed by Steve Miner, who did direct Friday the 13th Part 2. He also directed House, the horror movie House, Soul Man, Forever Young, My Father the Hero, Big Bully, Halloween H2O, and Lake Placid. Stars Dana Kimmel, Tracy Savage, Richard Brooker, Gloria Charles, David Cadams, and Paul Kratka. IMDb score of 5.6, Rotten Tomato score of 7%. Budget $2.3 million. Box office $36.7. Everybody got paid. You want to get the plot?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So usually this is where Dan does his spiel. I have not committed it to memory, but Tia, Top 10 with Tia, check it out on YouTube and Geek Vibes Nation, and Game Vault Pod, bi-weekly video game podcast with Mark and our friend Tom and Jen. So check that out wherever you get your podcasts. And you guys are going to listen to Message from Friends of Podcast now, and we will be right back.
Hey everyone, this is Steve.
And this is Adam.
And we're part of the Hop Nation USA podcast,
Pittsburgh's #3 craft beer podcast.
Join us every Friday for new beer reviews.
We'll talk about the news, history, and homebrewing.
Plus, we'll sit down with the best brewers and industry personalities that'll have us.
So whether you're a casual drinker, a hazy boy hophead,
Or even if you're a whale hunting cellar hoarder.
just search Hop Nation USA on Apple, Spotify, or your favorite podcatcher and join the nation.
Oh, hi. Didn't see you there. It's me, George, from the best little horror house in Philly, the show where we talk about the best horror movie ever made, according to our guest at least. We've talked about groundbreaking classics like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Alien, but we've also got a lot of great ones coming up, including some very fun guests like Len Kabaczynski of Swamp Zombies and Red Letter Media fame, Caroline Williams, the star of Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and Chase Williamson from John Dies at the End. So make sure you're subscribed to the best little horror house in Philly, and I'll see you boils and ghouls over there.
And welcome back. Now it's time to get into the plot for Friday the 13th Part 3. We open by picking up from the previous film's events in a flashback sequence. Then we get Jason, survives his attack from Paul and Ginny, migrates to a store where he changes clothes and then murders store owners, the henpecked Harold with a meat cleaver into his chest, and his shrewd wife Edna with a knitting needle through the back of her head.
The one thing I love about the flashback that I forgot about with part 2 was her unnecessarily walking away from blocking the mother's head. Her plan was to sort of cut his head off or something. There was no need for her to move to do that. And I'm just like, yes, they had to give a reason for there to be a fight here, but it was just so dumb. And also the whole fact that him just putting on the sweater made him think it was the mother.
And then he moves on to a nearby lakefront property named Higgins Haven. At the same time, 18-year-old Chris Higgins, who was attacked by a mysterious disfigured stranger in the woods near Crystal Lake 2 years earlier, returns to the property with her friends Debbie's boyfriend Andy, dim-witted prankster Shelly, Vera, and stoners Chuck and Chili. Ton of characters, and none of them all that memorable.
I don't even remember if they said Chuck and Chili's name. Maybe Chuck at one point. I just knew them as the two. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure they called each other by name, but nobody else does.
Okay.
Yeah. And just so everyone knows, this is the IMDb plot synopsis. That's why it's going to be quick. And I am going to know things that I had no way of knowing, like these characters' names, besides Shelly.
Yeah. It's essentially, it's a lot. We're mainly doing this just so you guys get to hear the plot, because we both just watched it and I could recite maybe a third of the movie.
Yeah. After meeting Abel, an inebriated religious fanatic derelict who warns them to turn back because they killed Ralph in the second one, the gang meets Chris's boyfriend, Rick, at their destination, Higgins Haven. Chris intends to face her fears. However, none of her friends know that an unmasked and reclusive Jason has taken refuge in their barn to recover from his wounds.
Now, is it maybe only the two friends in the front know, and that's it, I think? Because the boyfriend doesn't know, from what I remember.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody knows at this point. The boyfriend definitely doesn't, because we have that whole scene towards the end. Like half hour left in the movie, she drops that. I don't even know if we know.
Yeah, it feels like information that probably should have been shared with the group before they went to this location.
By the way, last time I was in these woods, I was chased by a maniac. Would have been some nice information.
Sure, yeah. Who I don't know if he's been caught.
Yeah.
Or dead.
Yeah. At least they could have brought a gun, Meanwhile, Shelly and Vera go shopping at a local supermarket to get food and supplies when they get into trouble with a 3-person biker gang called the Black Widows, led by a brutal woman named Fox. And when Shelly accidentally knocks over their motorcycles outside the store, Fox and her 2 minions, Ali and Loco, follow Shelly and Vera back to Higgins Haven. However, they are dealt with by Jason before they can do any real damage, except for taking the gas out of the gang's van.
I had captions on, and I don't think I caught the bikers' names. I think you just said it, but I think the only one I remember was him calling for the girl at one point in the barn.
Fox,
and said Fox over and over again.
Yeah,
I think that was the only one. God, yeah. So we highly recommend this movie. It's 4%.
Yeah. While looking around the barn in fascination, Fox is murdered with a pitchfork to her neck. Loco looks for her and gets impaled with another pitchfork. Ali is next when he enters the barn and finds the 2 corpses. He attacks the unseen Jason, but gets bludgeoned with a 10-inch pipe wrench. At nightfall, Jason continues lurking around the barn while spying on the kids who settle down for a party at the nearby cabin. When Chris and Rick go for a walk in the woods, Jason wanders out of the barn to cause more harm again. First, Jason only harasses them from a distance. When Chuck goes to an outhouse to take a dump and smokes more pot, Jason walks past and bangs on the walls of the outhouse before retreating.
I'm just imagining being Chuck in that outhouse. High as fuck. And then all of a sudden someone starts banging on the outhouse.
Yeah. Later, Shelley, wearing a wetsuit and a Red Wings hockey mask, plans another scare prank against Vera, who is sitting on a pier beside Higgins Lake. After Vera angrily tells Shelley to go off, he wanders into the barn where Jason slits his throat and takes his hockey mask, now concealing his deformity.
God, this guy really regrets taking classes from Mystery on how to pick up women.
Yeah. Negging and peacocking.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the only moment this character has in the whole movie is right before he dies. where he says to her, he's like, I'd rather do that than be nothing. And then walks away. I'm like, oh, that's a little bit of character. He thinks he's nothing. Ah. And then she says, I don't think you're nothing. And I'm like, oh, good. Then he dies.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, awesome.
But he is just a pain in the ass to be around.
Yep. There's a reason that they had to trick their friend into going out.
Yeah. It's like, I promised you it's your personality that is so off-putting. It's not how you look. Taking the spear gun that Shelley had with him, Jason, fully masked now, walks out of the barn and sees Vera wading out in the shallow water to get Shelley's wallet after she accidentally drops it in the water. Thinking it's Shelley, Jason shoots Vera right in her left eye, killing her as her body falls into the water. Jason then discards the spent spear gun.
That's another great thing I like about these early Jasons is that it's very resourceful for what to kill the teens with.
Yeah, he's got like a tool shed or something in the woods. With Vera killed, Jason finally sneaks into the house where he continues onward with his killing spree. After Andy and Debbie have sex, she goes to the bathroom for a shower, but gets surprised by Andy, who is walking on his hands, like Jim Cotta.
Yeah, that's the prequel.
Yeah.
Jim Cotta.
Debbie leaves the shower and rests in her hammock in her bedroom, where she soon discovers Andy's horizontally split body hanging from an overhead plank and gets stabbed through the hammock with the kitchen knife.
I feel very much like this movie is just Jason playing a very complicated game of Clue. Like, I'm going to kill this one with the harpoon gun in the lake.
Yeah, all answers are valid.
Answers are valid in this game of Clue.
Yes, that's right. But also, the harpoon on the dock. Next, Jason disables the power to the cabin by tampering with the fuse box. When Chuck goes to the basement to fix it, Jason approaches him from behind and shoves his face onto the circuit panel, electrocuting him. At the same time, Shelley, who is still alive, stumbles into the cabin before dying, where Chili finds him. She is quickly attacked and killed by Jason, who shoves a hot fireplace poker through her stomach. Again,
another moment that was just meant for the 3D.
Yeah. When Chris and Rick return, they find the place empty. They split up to find out what's going on. Rick outside is attacked by Jason, who kills him by crushing his head. One of his eyes popped out. That's pretty cool, though. That was actually a pretty cool kill.
Yeah, I forgot about that. But you would think that she's been chased by a murderer before, that she would not want to split up.
Yeah.
You would think.
After finding the corpse of Loco, Jason then confronts Chris with a felling axe, and a climactic chase ensues with the two of them exchanging attacks. This plot synopsis does have a problem with identifying who they're talking about. Because it sounds like after finding the corpse of Loco, Jason then confronts Chris. It sounds like Jason discovered the corpse of Loco.
Yeah.
During this chase, she slows him down by knocking a bookshelf onto him, then stabs him in the left leg with the same knife used to kill Debbie, just before Jason throws it at a wall, which nearly hits Chris, and then bashes him with a fireplace log. Chris tries to escape in the van and almost hits him. Yeah.
The log.
Chris tries to escape in the van and almost hits Jason, but it soon's running out of gas due to the biker gang's vandalism, forcing her to run back to the barn to hide.
It's a callback.
Mm-hmm. They set it up in the first act. The payoff in the third.
Yep, that's basic screenwriting. Screenwriting 101.
Mm-hmm. Little Chekhov's gun here. Jason enters the barn and arms himself with a machete and confronts Chris on the barn's rafters, but she manages to subdue him by bashing him on his head with a shovel. She defeats Jason by tying him to a rope and hanging him, but Jason survives the hanging and briefly shows his real disfigured face to Chris while trying to get the noose off his neck. She recognizes him as the man who attacked her 2 years ago, and as Jason proceeds to attack Chris with his machete, one of the bikers, Ali, who survived his attack, attempts to get revenge on Jason, but Jason cuts off his right hand and kills him. While Jason's killing Ali, Chris picks up a felling axe and slams it down to Jason's skull, causing him to stagger and fall over, seemingly killing him. Chris then wanders over to the lake and falls asleep in a canoe, and drifts into the middle of the lake. The next morning, she wakes up in the canoe, when suddenly she sees Jason, now unmasked and bloody from the axe, appearing from an upper window, causing him to run outside to the lake to attack, but sees that it was just part of her imagination. Reliving, suddenly she gets pulled into the water by a decaying Mrs. Voorhees, who has her head still intact. It is revealed that this is just a disturbed nightmare, and at some point later, police take Chris, mentally disturbed from the events, off the property into the police car as they drive off. The film ends with Jason's deceased corpse still with the axe intact in his head and showing the lake in peace once again. Kind of a callback to the first ending. And then that is the end of Friday the 13th Part 3.
Yeah, sort of really strange and boring. Literally, that synopsis reminded me of like 3 or 4 things that I completely forgot happened in the movie. And I watched it about an hour ago. But yeah, it's just, it's one of those that just felt like they tried to do the same thing again and just ran out of ideas. Which is essentially where my Clue joke came from. It was just like, what weapon and what location do we kill this person with? That's what it felt like. Nothing seemed organic, at least to me. But hopefully in 10 months' time or 11 months' time, we will see a good one.
Yeah. Halloween, Friday the 13th Part 4, much better. Might be my favorite one of the series.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I think
you haven't watched many of these, right?
No, I think the next one I've seen, I saw 1, 2, and then Manhattan, and X before we saw X.
Gotcha.
Because that was the thing where that was somebody a little mark history here. Some kid downloaded that off of Napster or LimeWire or whatever it was back then, and somehow got it connected so that and put it on a disc and made the teacher unknowingly play it during school in class in high school.
Nice.
We were like it's like the end of the school year, and it's like, oh, we just need some movies. He's like, oh, I got one, put it in, and then like we got to my favorite Jason kill, the liquid nitrogen smashing his head, and the teacher was like, whoa, no, okay.
It's like several kills in.
Yeah, it was like, all right, I can't do this anymore.
Probably watched it in glorious 256p.
Yeah, it was not a good copy. But yeah. So
took him 4 days to download.
Mom, you gotta stay off the phone. But I think I've seen more Freddy's than I have Jason.
Sure.
And I guess technically at this point more Halloweens than I've seen than that. Just from you guys more so than my own watching. But it's one thing I love about horror and why I'm excited for the next 2 movies this month is I get to see things I've never seen before or get to see movies I probably should have seen. But just since I don't have the same level of horror appreciation that you guys do, I have not seen it. So like we each have our go-to genres that are stupid. Like I'm not saying horror stupid, but you'll when you just want to watch something dumb and entertaining, you'll go find some dumb entertaining horror movie, and I'll go find some dumb action movie to go watch. But this one was a miss, but we got 2 more exciting ones coming this month for you guys.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, and actually, this is kind of going to wrap us up this week. We had a third segment planned, but without Dan, no real point to do it. So we're gonna call it a night. So check back in next week. We're gonna do another movie, and then our October horror movie of the month. We're gonna have something special for that because I think the Twitter polls are kind of dead. So we're going to do something a little different for that one. So check in with that. We'll probably decide it on next week's episode. Check that out. Follow us on all our socials, Twitter, Instagram, at TickTamPod, also on Threads. Find us there. And They Called Us a Movie on TikTok. Good place to find us there. And YouTube, too. They Called Us a Movie. Or TickTamPod. I think it's They Called Us a Movie. But anyway, look for They Call This Movie on YouTube. We post these. You can watch a video of just a still image and listen to this podcast, or Dan edits short versions of the actual episodes and post them up. I do have to post this month's one, which is good. It's a classic episode that I'm sure you would enjoy. Hit us up, ticktampod@gmail.com if you got any good ideas for movies that you want us to watch. And questions, comments, give us a 5-star review in your podcatcher of choice. Yeah, all that stuff. I say it every week, but saying it again. So we're going to get out of here. Check us out next week. The director of Friday the 13th Part 3 is Steve Miner. So for Dan Aquino and Mark Myers, this is the Anthony Delvecchio telling Steve Miner, well, you certainly made a movie, didn't you? Thanks for listening to They Call This a Movie. Subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to check us out on Twitter and Instagram at TickTamPod. That's TCTAM Pod. You can also check us out on TikTok at They Call This a Movie.